Thomas!
Joseph!
Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well.
Been too long. And we were going to leave Tom and Joe show and become...
Just two guys talking today. And it might be for the next couple of sessions as well.
Because we were talking before we got to talking about what we want to talk about, and my hero is Mr. Personality
MBTI?
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, you love the squares.
I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were really talking, also kind of segueing into that, to looking at our state, because we live in Montana. We both lived in Montana. God, I grew up here, left here for a little bit, but you've been here...
Oh, since the mid-'70s.
Yeah.
So over, 40 years?
Yep.
Oh, just a tad bit over 40 years.
41, 42 years. So.
Remember, though, I got to say this for the record, I'm semi-native. And I remember my great-grandfather brought the first arc welder into the state of Montana from the Chicago World's Fair.
Yeah.
So I lay a little claim to fame.
And that's like what do you call it?
What's that?
Yeah, 'cause it's like
claim to fame? Semi-native.
Semi-native. That's
Yeah,
me too.
yeah.
I semi-native. 'Cause part of my family grew up here, but my parents were in Minnesota. Then we came here in '67. But we love Montana. We both love Montana. And the reason we want to talk is because we both have a lot of angst about Montana living in the cellar of where it's living. Because it is the last best place. I truly agree with that. But drugs and alcohol, not a good thing.
No. And it's well, what can we say? What are the stats right now for suicides in Montana? Let's start with that. Are we number one?
Yeah, we're the worst. One of the worst. I think Alaska beats us, but we're down in the cellar also for suicides.
You know, and the reason I bring that up and the whole issue of suicides is there is a huge correlation with suicides and drug and alcohol abuse.
Yes.
And that's coupled with the fact that some of the recent studies that I've read have looked at the biggest problems in the country come from rural areas. And Montana is really still considered a rural state for the most part.
Yeah, I think it was in the late 1890s, early 1900s, we were over 1 million population because of the gold and oil, and not the gold and oil, but the gold and the copper and all that.
Yeah.
I think we're over 1 million again because of just being the destination place to come.
Yeah.
So we are considerably, we're a big state. We're not as big as California and Texas, but we are, I think we're like the 6th or 7th largest state in the union.
Fourth
largest?
Fourth.
Yeah, so we're huge.
Yeah.
But it's, 1 million people spread out over a lot of area.
It's a huge area. Yeah. Yeah. And, with that said, you were talking the other day about the whole idea of transportation, offering free transportation.
Yes.
Because?
We want you to go out and drink. We want you to come downtown Bozeman, Montana, or Missoula, Montana, or Billings, Montana, but especially in Bozeman, Montana, we want you to come down and drink, and we will give you a free ride home if you drink too much.
Yeah, and what is it? It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
It's a Band-Aid to the issue.
Yeah. And it's scary because I grew up, I was a party guy. I love parties. Even today, I still love going to parties. But I really get frustrated because it's like, how do we address behavior by just saying, sure, your behavior's going to get out of control and you're going to be doing something, and we'll give you a free ride home. How does that address the behavior of addiction and alcoholism and all of that? And that was my frustration with that. Was, it's like, most of my friends own bars downtown. I know most of the bar owners in Bozeman, Montana. They're friends of mine. And I never talked to them about, what is it like to, where's that fine line between behavior and what we, do as, being business owners, and is offering a free ride home a good thing? And I still don't have a quick answer for that.
Well, it's a good start anyway to keep people off the roads.
Yes.
It's a really good start to do that. But
Even with that, though, we're still one of the worst places. We're in that cellar again, still for DUIs, even though we're offering free rides. And you watch, there's people using them, but we're still one of the worst places for DUIs.
I know, and we got to admit that the car is the modern version of the horse.
Yes.
People love their horses.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to rationalize until the
Absolutely.
cows come home to get in that car. I can make it.
Yep.
And guess what? Oh, they forgot to turn their lights on.
Yep. They forgot to put it in park and they passed out. And it's like, how do you really address all that? 'Cause, that'd be a fun question. I never thought about that. But did they give DUIs for riding a horse? And they might have.
I think there's, I don't know. I'm not going to say anything because we're being recorded and I don't want to say a fact. But I was thinking the other day, because I've been thinking, I was wondering, just for the sake of knowing the history, I'm wondering when was the first DUI given out? Because when cars came out, there probably weren't DUI laws on the books, and I'm just wondering how that evolved. Or when, I hate to ask this question, I was thinking about this 2 days before we did this, when was the first person killed by a DUI driver?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have that information next time. But still, I don't know what the percentage is. I know in the 70s, I know in the mid-70s that 50% of the fatalities on the highway were alcohol related.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that is yet today.
Because it's just frustrating, because, we're going to travel many bunny trails as we start to talk all these, and this is our first kickoff talk, so people please understand that we want the feedback as we start talking. We want your feedback on where we should go with this, but please hear us loud and clear. We love Montana. We love living in the state of Montana, and we love the United States of America, but we need a wake-up call. And that's what got me was, in the 80s, I was hired from Minnesota to go down to Oklahoma and work with a company called A Chance to Change and develop talks that were geared to families, geared to young adults, young people, about addiction and alcoholism and what the trap of that is. And that's what frustrates me. I don't see that happening in Montana. And there's a lot better ways to handle what's going on in Montana than just saying, take a free ride.
Right. I don't know how that's going to happen. That's what we're here for, is to talk about some of the solutions to this. And I know one of them is going to be community-based.
Yes.
It's not, the state's not going to take care of it. The state, face it, folks, and we talked about this the other day, is that the state gets a lot of money from taxes from alcohol. That's a huge lobby. And I'm not going to go there, whether it's right or wrong or good or bad. It is what it is. There's a lot of that goes on. Yet, the studies show, when it comes to addiction, that individuals that are put into communities are more apt to hook into communities, other than bars and that social scene. Other social areas will have a much higher propensity to drop that idea of addiction or using some sort of substance to curb their anxiety, because that's what they're basically doing. Is there's an anxiety that somehow the alcohol becomes the Band-Aid again to what's going on in their lives.
And it's the oil that gets the conversations going in those parties. Right. And there's other ways to drop into that. Because I love getting together with my friends. I love getting together in groups. I love this synergy that happens in all of that.
Yeah.
And it's fun. Downtown Bozeman on a Friday and Saturday night is a lot of fun. And some of that happens to deal with the alcohol issue, and people cross that line too often. But it's, when I was hired out of Minnesota to go down to Oklahoma, we dealt with, like you said, the system. We dealt with the family system. And, it's like, how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with that within a family system, within a state, within a city, within a neighborhood, within that? And that's why I kind of always, work my way down, is how do I deal with that? And when I look at Montana and what's going on with it, it's like, okay, we need, as a state, to start looking at that. Excuse me. And like you said, we need to start not looking to the state to fix it. We need to start looking at the city and within that neighborhood fix it and say, hey, you guys are drinking too much. What's going on? Is there something we can do? And that's where we start. And there are, it's like in Bozeman, there's a lot of neighborhood communities. Like there's like the East neighborhood community, there's the downtown community neighborhood, and it's like, how do we get that conversation going within those communities? I'm not sure yet, but we're gonna have fun figuring it out.
Yeah, and I think that's the part, is to actually get the people who are drinking to have a conversation with them. And one of the ideas, because I'm thinking off the top of my head, is to just simply go out on a Friday night and talk to people on the street, find out what they're doing. Why are they there? Are they having fun?
Are they really having fun?
Well, that's the point. Are they really having fun? Have they done this before? And have they ever regretted it the next day?
I regretted a lot of it when I was a kid.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
And how do we get them to start bearing fruit from, okay, Friday night I enjoyed it, Saturday morning I did not enjoy it, as I started remembering what I had done.
Well, it has to start with the question, and you go directly to that. There was a group in I forget which city it was. I want it was Chicago. They had this really incredibly bad gang violence. People were getting killed. And what these people did, to make a long story short, is the community members and the pastors went out onto the street and talked to people. Just had a conversation. Just set up a relationship. It took a long time. But they just had a conversation with people. And the short of the story is, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
And it's always, what gets me is, even in this technological day where we're sitting there listening to our phones to see how long we've been talking already, is even in today's society, it's still me and you talking face to face, eyeball to eyeball, and hearing each other talk. And that's what it's going to take. And that's what it took for us when we went down from Minnesota to Oklahoma, is we had to start talking with people about, are you finished? Have you had enough? Are you ready to have this change? And that's my hope, is that Montana is truly ready to have this change, because we've been where we've been for too long.
Absolutely. And as an aside, one of the things that really worries me is that my daughter lives and works at Big Sky. She drives a canyon road several times a week. And as a dad, and she's a good driver. She's a good driver. And my fear is not with her. It's with the other car coming up or down the canyon. It's that. It's the education. And I'm not saying that every individual or every accident that's caused by alcohol is addiction related. Yet there still is that education that has to come forward, that one drink is enough to cause problems in driving, is to inhibit people's reactions. That's a scientific fact. As they say in the advertising that I've heard, is that buzz driving is drunk driving.
Yes.
They may not be over the limit, yet for me as a martial artist and a movement specialist, I know that any substance in my body like that is going to cause me.
Yeah, it impedes everything.
It impedes everything. Absolutely. Timing, the whole 9 yards. So, and that's part of the whole education again. It's not just the addiction issue, but it's also, because how long has it been since Montana gave up the open container law? I mean, for years you could drive with a beer in the car.
And I think it's still there, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I do believe that's done.
That did change.
That did change.
But
one cannot do that.
Yeah, and it's like, how do we get the conversation going? Because as we start to segue towards closing, now we got probably halfway, is addiction approval is what we want to talk about also, along with alcoholism, drug addiction, what goes on with all that whole minutia of stuff, is approval addiction. And how do we, as parents of young adults, start to help our young adults learn? We as your parents need to say, look, this is not okay.
Right.
Even though you believe it's okay, it's not okay.
Right.
We don't
Right.
need your approval. We just need to have understand. We are your parents.
Yeah.
This is what we say.
Well, I'm going to throw this out there because I think that there may be a lot of people out there that are listening to this that may disagree. It's my belief that most every human being on the planet is addicted to something and is an addict. And it's not that it's going to kill people. Yet, going or gone unchecked, it's going to have ramifications in people's lives. And let me bring it to the social media thing and texting, for example. Addiction to technology is huge today. It's becoming, Google it. I invite you to do that for those people who are listening. But look at the people who are being killed now by texting or answering a text on their phone. And what is that? When you talk about approval addiction, that could be related to something like the fear of rejection, the fear of inadequacy, the fear of losing a friend because that message is so important, it overrides
Common sense.
common sense to keep one's hand on the steering wheel and look where they're going. You know, I classify that as a certain kind of addiction, to have to be connected. And, you know, part of what I think addiction is a refusal and fear to truly know one's self, to truly be oneself. For instance, I don't have to answer that text. I'm going to be just fine because that text is going to be there when I stop.
Yeah, when I laugh, because it's like, we're old enough, it's like we lived where cell phones did not exist, and, you know, my mom and dad could not reach out and touch me at a moment's notice for hours upon hours of time.
Yeah.
You know, weeks time would go by sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, you know, with a smartphone, I can text my daughter, I can text my son, I can text my wife,
Right.
and reach out.
Yeah.
And it's like that instant approval of, you know, I can reach out, I can see what's going on,
Right.
and look for that approval.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary.
Well, folks, when we talk about this, it's not just this. The studies have shown there is a true chemical change that happens in the brain when these things are happening. And it's so insidious. I have seen a 90-year-old in a meeting, while it's going on, have to answer her phone. Literally answer it and pick it up and talk.
Yeah.
While somebody's already up on the stage speaking.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's
And
insidious.
I've been in front of crowds
Yeah.
where that's happened.
Yeah.
You know, it's back when I first was public speaking, it was a pager,
Mhm.
you know, would go off, and you'd see someone stand up and hold their hip as
Yeah.
their pager was going off, and they're heading out the back door. You know, today it's, you know,
Yeah.
they just answer the phone
Mhm.
because they need that instant connection.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what we're talking about, is that how to educate and get people to know that they can live in the moment. The moment is what they're doing and not what they have to do vicariously by one of these, well, my device is over there, on airplane mode, by the way. So that's part of the process. So this whole thing, I think where we're going is maybe addiction as a whole, and there's going to be all these offshoots that come off of that. You know, how to deal with that, how to manage these things, how to educate people. You know, again, what you were saying before we started, this whole idea of approval addiction, you know, is relatively new. And what I want you all to understand out there is the fact that everybody is addicted to some level of approval. And you may disagree with that, but come and see me and I'll give you a test and I'll bet you'll change your mind on that. And it's repairable, it's fixable. But the thing is, I do believe that this whole thing is genetic. We need to be approved by other people. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have it, because that's part of society, is what binds us together, is to be accepted by others. But the point is to what point does that kind of addiction hamstring us from achieving our goals and objectives.
And that's the part, because it's like, we're asking for almost like a battle cry or something similar, because it's like we are two guys talking.
Yeah.
But we see where our state that we love, our country that we love,
Yeah.
is just almost imploding down.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, how do we say enough?
Right. And I might throw this out there. It's a big term, but I think this whole addiction problem is a national security risk.
Yes.
It's totally a national security risk.
It's true.
We're being led by the noses by those things that we could call addictions. And, dare I say, those systems out there that allow that to happen. We are, folks, and Joe, we are like frogs in boiling water.
Okay, and I love that one, because it's like, what happens in a frog in boiling water?
Well, here's the theory. Yeah, maybe it's not scientific, but take a frog and put it in a pot of cold water, its normal environment, and then put a flame underneath it. Being a cold-blooded creature, the theory is, don't test this. We don't want any
Please.
animal cruelty. But the metaphor is the fact that as that temperature rises slowly, that frog will not jump out, and therefore become boiled alive. And that's the metaphor. When we get involved with some system so much, it becomes so much part of our lives.
We accommodate.
We accommodate, we don't recognize it. And what it takes is somebody from the outside to see we're in that pot or that box or that dream and say, my friend, my brother, my sister, you're dreaming, or you're the water's too hot, you're starting to blister, and you're going to die.
Yep.
Or you're going to destroy yourself, or you're not going to achieve your goal. What did you tell me last year? I mean, not you. This is an idea. What do you want to achieve in life? And all of a sudden, you've got all these distractions that are keeping you from achieving that.
And that's what gets frustrating, because it's like, but we talked about this, you and I, I can't remember how long ago, when we had a tragedy happen maybe 12, 15 years ago, where a young man on a homecoming weekend rolled his Suburban and killed his best friend. And Montana wasn't where it is now, but it started to work its way there at that point. And we're still there, and we're still talking about it, because it's like, that wasn't a big enough problem. And it's like, okay, what's it going to take to wake up our city, our state, our country to, we need to pay attention to what's going on so we can stop it.
I know, and here's what flabbergasts. When I was in business, I had a business on East Main Street here in Bozeman. And Main Street is actually a highway that's controlled by the state. And there used to be semis that would park out right in front of the entrance to my business. And I calculated that people going at a speed limit of 35 miles an hour at the time, or actually it was a little bit more than that. I calculated the distance of the semi, the length of the semi, and how long it would take for a car to get out. And if there's a car coming that they couldn't see, how long would it take for the intersect? And there was never enough time for that car to get out, unless you were a drag racer. And so I went to the city, and I said, would you lower the speed limit? And they said, well, that's not up to us. You have to go to the state. So, okay, I went to the state. And I asked the state, what's the story here? This is too fast. There's been several accidents. And they said, okay, we'll get back to you. And they got back to me a week later. And what they told me was they needed statistics.
Okay.
And I'm going to translate that to mean deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody died.
Yep.
The thing is, the reason I tell that story is that we've got statistics now
Yes.
in the state of Montana. We got the suicides, we got the DUIs, we've got the people dying on the highways due to alcohol consumption. Or texting, whatever it is. What's going on? Why aren't we making an effort to change this? I think that's the whole crux of what we're discussing here.
is how do we go ahead as a state, as people talking to each other? We want to challenge people to join us in a conversation. And sure, we're going to have our video up there and have you guys have the comments, and we're sure there'll be comments, but it's like, how do we get you to start talking to someone else other than just sending us a comment on the video?
Yeah.
It's like, how do you talk to other people about, hey, let's get people starting to talk. And we're willing to go wherever you want us to go.
Yeah.
We're willing to go talk.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to give us comments. I mean, we talk about approval addiction and that one of the approval addiction questions has to do with a question that leads to fear of being judged.
Yeah.
Please, you're not going to get judged. Feedback for us is really important.
Yeah.
To find out what you guys are thinking out there, what you're feeling.
And
we need that.
I know for a fact that his skin is thick. And he knows for a fact that mine's thick too.
Thicker.
Yeah. It's, I've been 40 years in addiction. That's how long I've been working around and through it. And my dad, before that, and with my mom, were doing addictions way back in the 50s and 60s. So I know addiction. But it's like, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time for it to start to change and move on to a new stream bank. And I'm looking forward to what that's going to be and how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We need to wrap up because we're
Okay.
within a couple minutes of being done, probably even more than that. But it's like, how do we wrap this kind of whole 25 minutes up?
Well, again, we're two guys talking. We're starting a conversation on changing and creating, and one of my bylines is creating a space for change.
Yep.
And I think that's what we're trying to do, is create a space for change, a space for something different to happen, to have a new, I'll use this word, a new paradigm on what's going on, to expose the emperor's new clothes,
Okay.
I think.
Yep. And he's
Does
not
that-
naked this time.
No.
He is new clothes.
He needs a new pair of clothes, a new wardrobe on this.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen overnight.
No, it can happen within a year or two or three.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it's going to start to change, and we encourage the synergy of the change to begin.
Right, right. And that's what we're doing. We want to open up this conversation and find where our goal and our objective is in this whole process.
Yep. So thank you for listening. Thank you, and please, like we already said numerous times, comment, comment, and comment. And I'm Joe Lair.
And I'm Tom Stenzel. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.